Well, fellas, I think it is finally time to address what has happened in Tennessee Titanland in the past month. So much. So much has gone down. Mike Vrabel fired. Brian Callahan hired. And admittedly, there have been a lot of emotions running through my bones the past few weeks. Like, a lot has happened in a small amount of time. And I am going to touch on the Mike Vrabel firing, how I feel about our new head coach. And there's a lot of stuff I want to cover because a lot of people have been asking me about this. And here we are today. And on top of that, man, when it comes to, my football fandom as a collective unit, when it comes to college and when it comes to pro, obviously a diehard Titans fan, Mike Vrabel got fired. That was emotional. I've been a lifelong Alabama fan. I am almost 29 years old, since I was like 7, 8, 9 years old. Nick Saban retires. I'm an alumni of the University of South Alabama, season ticket holder there, very passionate about their program as well. Our head coach leaves, to probably the best coach we've ever had. He leaves to go to Alabama as a defensive coordinator. So every one of my football teams have lost their head coach in the past month. So let me tell you, your boy has been on an emotional ride. It's been a roller coaster the past month. Obviously, here just to talk about Mike Vrabel and Brian Callahan. But it's just wild, man. It's just so wild how fast things can change in the landscape of sports. It's just absolutely insane. And first thing, obviously, what we are going to touch on is Mike Vrabel and how I feel about his firing, because I will tell you right now, it still hurts to this day, and I still wonder whether or not that was the right move for a bunch of different reasons. But first of all, I have to say, I absolutely love Mike Vrabel. He is an incredible leader of men, and what he was able to do with such minuscule talent is something that I have not seen in a very long time in the NFL. Like, I am fully convinced if you hand select about 26, 27 head coaches from the NFL the past season, you swap them with Mike Vrabel, let them coach the roster that he had to coach, I don't think that team's winning more than 2 and 3 games. That's how bad the Titans roster was this past season. And it's just really not been, they've had talent, but I think their record has exceeded their talent level almost, I think probably each and every year Mike Vrabel has been the head coach of the Titans. Like, he has done some absolute incredible things with very, very, very little. And that is really what worries me. And I think the main thing I am kind of disappointed in when it comes to the firing of Mike Vrabel is I would have loved to have seen what he would have done with Rand Carthon given this upcoming offseason, because the Titans, depending on what source you see or what source you listen to, they have either the number 1 or number 2 most cap space in the NFL this offseason. They also have the highest draft pick they've had since Mike Vrabel's been a head coach, or if he wouldn't have got fired. So with that draft capital, with the the elite draft pick that they have, with the amount of money that they have, and with what Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel was able to do last offseason, I know that I already said the talent level was really low, but the pieces that they added this past offseason were actually, they kind of went bargain hunting, and almost every signing that they made was actually super solid outside the Andre Dillard signing, which was definitely a catastrophe. But they had very limited resources. The problem is they were really held back the last 3 or 4 years on what they could spend and who they could sign because of the Ryan Tannehill contract. And obviously he's going to be leaving. Ryan Tannehill last season, I think, had the second, or maybe even last year, had the biggest cap hit of any quarterback, any player in the league. It might have been behind Mahomes, but he was at least top 2. So that just shows you. And also, the team has missed on their last, 3, or maybe at this point, 4 first-round picks. A couple of them have been like generational busts. Like, Isaiah Wilson played 1 snap as a first-round pick. You had Caleb Farley, our first-round pick cornerback. He's barely played. He's gone through a lot, so I'm not going to... I love him as a person. But when you miss on your first and second round picks for about 3 or 4 straight years, and you're really limited on what you can spend because of your quarterback's a ridiculous cap hit, that was tough for Mike Vrabel. I'm really sure it was. Now, where the issue lied with Mike Vrabel, and where I think is what ultimately got him fired, it does seem like he has a bit of an ego, and it does seem like he is, in a sense, a bit of a control freak and kind of wants his way. And the whole thing is that it seems like the Tennessee Titans ownership want to go in the direction of pure collaboration between, front office, head coach. And it seems like they tried that, and from everything that I've seen, it just wasn't working to the extent that they liked. But again, like with the thing is too, they nailed this last draft. This last draft, the first draft in the Brian Callahan era, was the best draft class they've had since probably 2019, since probably the year they drafted Jeff Simmons. So in a sense, like I would have loved to see what Vrabel could have done with the resources they have this offseason. But at the same time, if the ownership does want to go in a new direction and they felt like Mike Vrabel was just a little bit too much of a control freak to really get that sense of collaboration that they want as a unit moving forward, I do understand why they made the move. I was really initially kind of upset with the fact, well, number one, it just sucks. I love Mike Vrabel, that he got fired in general. But I also thought they could have possibly got some draft capital back, and that's something that this team does lack. They have, some elite top end picks this year, but in terms of those middle rounds, they don't have many. They don't have a third round pick. They got some late fourth, late fifth. So I just really was hoping they could trade him for something. But as you see now, he might not even get hired as a head coach anywhere. There's only 2 more jobs left, and there's not really been many rumors between those two organizations and Mike Vrabel. So maybe there just really wasn't the interest that I believe was there when it came to Mike Vrabel. Now, do I think the sky is falling like a lot of the people in the NFL world think when it comes to firing Mike Vrabel? I don't think so. Like, I do think he's a great coach given the right situation and the right amount of power in a way. But I understand the reservations when it comes to Mike Vrabel and kind of the things that have came out about kind of how he runs things over the past month since he's got fired. So I do understand why they made the move that they did. And it still does suck because I think, like I said, Mike Vrabel is an incredible coach. I genuinely do think he has the potential to be a top 10 coach. But maybe for him, like, this will be a great chance to step back and see really what it is that went wrong, because a Mike Vrabel-led team traditionally just does not collapse like they have the last 2 years. And in terms of like doing more with such little talent, like this is a team that last year had no business being in the conversation for the 1 seed. And about 10 weeks into the season, they were 7-3, coming off a big win at Green Bay on Thursday Night Football. Then Ryan Tannehill gets hurt, and they have to bring in a Malik Willis, who just obviously wasn't ready to play just yet. And things just went downhill fast. But at the same time, that's the same team that was 2 minutes away from making the playoffs. And also, that's the same Malik Willis-led team that had no receivers whatsoever, that about went into Arrowhead Stadium and beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and you could very well make an argument they should have that game. So again, it does worry me that we had a coach that could win with minimal talent, and he had the opportunity to acquire more talent that he's acquired in a single offseason, probably his entire tenure as a Titan, and he's gone. So what worries me the most is I could see this next season being an absolute disaster with Brian Callahan, but that doesn't mean in terms of the future, like 2-3 years down the line, he isn't the right guy for the job. Like, I honestly would, and when it comes to just next season, would have more faith in Mike Vrabel leading a playoff team than what I do Brian Callahan right now. But again, that doesn't mean Brian Callahan isn't the better choice for the future. And what makes me so excited is that Brian Callahan was obviously the number 1 choice for the Titans when it comes to all their interviews and who the guy is they really wanted to lead this organization. And with them wanting to take the collaboration approach and wanting to be no kinks there like there obviously was with Mike Vrabel and the front office and their whole regime. But with Brian Callahan, like from what we've seen so far, it already seems like him and Rand Carthon are like best freaking friends. So in the sense of collaboration, with that being one of the most important things, building this roster and moving forward this organization, I think that it's a much better fit than what Mike Vrabel is. It's just still worrisome when you bring in an unknown in Brian Callahan in terms of how he can actually lead a team with Cincinnati, which I'll touch on in a minute. Obviously he did an incredible job there. And he's been around some great quarterbacks. He's coached some great quarterbacks. So obviously he knows what he's doing there. But it's kind of different when you have to lead a whole group, as the head coach instead of just being an offensive coordinator or a quarterback's coach or something along those lines. So I would honestly, when it comes to the near future, like next season, I feel like I would have more faith in Mike Vrabel. But again, I understand the Brian Callahan hiring, and I am at this point still disappointed in a way. Like I still like in a sense of I'm gonna miss Mike Vrabel. He just like I feel like he did help turn the culture around there a lot, but at the same time, I am excited to actually have a head coach that seems like he is with the times moving forward and taking very collaborative analytics, just modern era football approach, which I feel like is something that Mike Vrabel lacked. And Mike Vrabel, the other thing that I think really ended up being his downfall is his track record of hiring like his close buddies, to run the offense, run the defense, and you'd always promote within. Like, especially the thing that bothered me the most is like when the offense obviously seemed like it needed some innovation, needed some new ideas. He just promoted from within this past season. I think he's done that like 2 or 3 straight times when it comes to the coordinator position. So he doesn't seem like he was the guy to really welcome new philosophy, new ideas. And I think that is ultimately one of the other reasons which really just led to the downfall, because the team was just so close. And I will die on the hill. If Ryan Tannehill doesn't have an absolute stinker in the divisional round against the Bengals. That was the Super Bowl ready team. They were going to play Kansas City in the championship the next week at home against the Chiefs team that they had already beat by 30. Was it 30? It was like 20. It was 3+ touchdowns in the regular season. Like, I fully believe that was our year. And Ryan Tannehill, I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive him for that. But, which at the same time, Ryan Tannehill gave us some of the best times we've had in the past decade. But with saying that, I have to say I still think Mike Vrabel is a super capable head coach in the National Football League if he can just learn from why this happened. Because if you told me Mike Vrabel was going to be fired 2 years ago, like 2 years in the future, I would have thought you were absolute psycho. But I understand why the organization made the decision that they did, and it does feel nice to know there's a fresh, new, innovative future coming. And as we touch on Brian Callahan, I am so excited when it comes to him for the development of Will Levis. Because the truth of the matter is, not Patrick Mahomes would have been successful in our offense last year. The left tackle position was one of the most catastrophic positional units I've seen that just led to the detriment of an overall football team. Like, it was just absolutely catastrophic, brother. Like, I think our starting left tackle, Andre Dillard, had obviously gave up the most sacks in the National Football League. Our second string left tackle, who started like 5 or 6 games, a young rookie 6th round pick, he gave up like the 5th most sacks in the National Football League. So when your first and second string left tackles are top 5 in most sacks allowed, that's a problem. That's a pretty big problem. So we really don't know the full potential of Will Levis because of how horrible that offensive line was, and I don't even think Patrick Mahomes could be successful in that type of situation. But the things that he did show, despite of how bad the offensive line was, makes me so excited. And knowing we have a guy coming in that has been around and has coached and knows what it takes to take a quarterback to the next level. I mean, he's been around Peyton Manning. I mean, obviously been around Joe Burrow. So like, and what he didn't call plays obviously in Cincinnati, but he was involved in so much. And just what we hear from Zach Taylor and what we hear from around the NFL, I just am so excited to see what he can do with Will Levis. And obviously, quarterback position is pretty important. And if we can get the most out of Will Levis and he can become what I think he can become, that is really what could open up our window again with him being on a cheap rookie contract for the next 3 seasons. And I genuinely think Will Levis, and I'm saying this as somebody that was fully against taking him when we did. I was more upset with the fact that we traded up to take Will Levis in the second round last season because of how little draft capital this franchise had. But at the end of the day, if he turn out how I think he will now, that was the perfect move, especially if he was going to get drafted before we picked in the second round last year. But as somebody that was completely against the pick at that point, I obviously have been proven wrong, and I think Will Levis can, and more probable than not, will be the quarterback of the future for the Titans franchise. And I think it is a great, and I was so worried that we were going to bring in a defensive-minded coach, because at this point, man, I just think emphasis has to be on the quarterback position and developing Will Levis to be the best he can be, because his leadership traits are there. His passion, his desire, his work ethic obviously is there. The physical traits are there. It just, if he can just take his game just to a little bit more of a next level, which from what it sounds like, I mean, obviously the coaching staff is not put in place yet, but it seems with the hiring of Brian Callahan, that is the direction they are going, and I think that puts Will Levis in a much better situation to be successful than what he was in with Mike Vrabel. So I think in that sense, that is definitely a net positive coming out of the firing of Mike Vrabel and the hiring of Brian Callahan. Although, again, I still am emotional, and it still sucks that Mike Vrabel is not the head coach. I do think it is definitely a net positive for the franchise moving forward. The only thing, again, that just worries me is you just never know. You just never know with a new head coach coming in. And, again, it worries me because I feel like Brian Callahan, as the head coach last year, wins maybe 3 games with the Titans. Mike Vrabel, no matter how, he could have an XFL level roster in the NFL and still find a way to win 5-6 games. And honestly, the Titans roster last year was on the verge of being XFL level. Although, honestly, aside from the offensive line, which is really the reason the team did it so bad as they did last year, he's had least talented teams. I mean, he got the 1 seed having to play 8 weeks without Derrick Henry and any half-decent receiver outside of A.J. Brown. So, that's literally my main worry with moving on from Mike Vrabel and the current state of the roster, because the roster, even with an offseason, I don't feel like is going to be a top-notch roster next year. That all could change if Will Levis takes a massive step forward in season number 2. But also, I think it is important that it traditionally is a bad thing, to move on from head coaches, when it comes to young quarterbacks development, especially just after year 1. And I think Will Levis, I could be wrong, but he's had like 3 or 4 different offensive coordinators in the past 3 or 4 years, which is normally a recipe for disaster. But I think if you're going to change offensive coordinators, head coaches for this young player and Will Levis that you're trying to develop, it's a great, great thing to bring in somebody that has been around quarterbacks like Peyton Manning, Joe Burrow, and they know what it takes to be successful in the National Football League. So I am very happy with the Brian Callahan hire. I don't know if there really is somebody else that I wanted more. Ben Johnson would have been solid, obviously, but I don't think that was ever really a match. And I do at this point have to put faith into the front office of the Tennessee Titans, because it does seem like each time, I absolutely love Amy. She's our owner. I think she feels like, even though I've never met her in my life, like she feels like my grandmother or something. I don't know. Like I feel like she just feels like every Titans fan's grandmother, which is a great trait. But obviously, as an owner of a national football organization, like there's a little bit more that has to be there. And the truth of the matter is, she has made some pretty tough decisions over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, she hired Mike Mularkey after he made the playoffs for the first time Titans made the playoffs in a long time, and then immediately got Mike Vrabel. So it's like every time she made a tough decision, it seems like she upgrades each and every time. Like John Robinson, he put together a really, really good roster that obviously made it to the freaking got the 1 seed. But for whatever reason, it was obvious that it was a massive decline in his his ability to evaluate players. I mean, he missed on 3 straight first-round picks. Second-round picks were missed as well. Like, our first and second-round picks the past 3, 4, I don't know if it's 4 drafts, maybe the past 3 drafts at this point, have just been catastrophic. Like, nobody is going to build a competitive football team when you miss on your top 2 picks for 3 consecutive years. And don't even get me started on the A.J. Brown nonsense. So, obviously, something happened there, or the NFL just moved too fast for him, because initially he did a fantastic job, bringing the Titans out of the gutter. But I say that to say, they fired him, and then they bring in Rain Carthon, who in year one, with the limited amount of resources he had to build the team in the offseason, I think did a pretty fantastic job. So the potential Rain Carthon overall being a better GM than John Robinson, I think, is incredible. Obviously, we saw Mike Vrabel as a head coach. Seems like he was a pretty massive upgrade from Mike Mularkey because he actually won some big playoff games, made it to an AFC championship game, got a 1 seed. So that, again, was a pretty massive upgrade. So you'd only expect, again, if you follow her track record, since she has been the controlling over of the Tennessee Titans every time that she makes a tough decision and cans somebody, she seems to definitely make an upgrade at whatever position that is that she's trying to hire. So when it comes to recapping my feelings on this entire situation, I do miss Mike Vrabel. Does that mean I think they made the wrong decision? Not necessarily. Number 3, again, I feel like when it comes to next season, I feel like as an organization, I would have had more faith and success if Mike Vrabel was still the head coach. But at the same time as well, and a really good point that I heard elsewhere when it comes to why they didn't give Mike Vrabel the opportunity to build with the resources that we have going into next season is because I think it's obvious at this point, and even as Mike Vrabel, I loved him. I thought this next year was do or die, like make the playoffs or it might be time to move on. And if that's the case, and for whatever reason, if they didn't have faith in him, which is obviously sort of the answer that we got from the decision that Amy made in firing him, if you did give him this offseason to build a team and it failed next season, that's the point. Like, you fire Mike Vrabel and bring in a new head coach, and he just had a massive offseason where he built the franchise in Mike Vrabel's, the way he wants to build it, and then you bring in a new head coach that's kind of screwed with these players that, aren't fit for his system. So when you make the move now and this new head coach has a bunch of resources to build the team how he wants to, not completely, but, a good start, he gets to build the team immediately is in his vision. So I understand that was probably a really, really big point in the firing of Mike Vrabel, is because you kind of handicap a new head coach if you make the move next year opposed to this year, because this is probably going to be the most cap space the Titans have in a given offseason in a really, really long time. Also like the fact that Brian Callahan actually said today on the radio that he is 100% open to bringing back Derrick Henry because he feels like Derrick Henry can fit in any offense. And I feel like, I know there's a lot of Titans fans that want to move on, but at the same time, Derrick Henry is just such a big figure in Nashville. Like, he is just such a big presence that people can just rally around. And I just feel like that there's just not a dollar amount that you can put on that. Obviously, you're not going to go out and sign Derrick Henry to a massive $20 million a year contract or something. But if the man wants 2 years over 2 years, $17 million, 2 years, $18 million contract, I think you pull the trigger on that just on his presence alone. And not to mention, the man is still, I believe, an incredible running back. We've been hearing every year now that he's going to fall off. And obviously, I don't think he's a Derrick Henry of the prime. But the Derrick Henry of 2023 is still, in my opinion, a top 5 running back in the NFL. And why not bring him back when he's been the face of this franchise for the past 10 years. I know all the fans are out there at this point, the fans that, love the analytics and love trying to, get all their answers from a study guide. That's the whole point for another day. They want Tajay Spears as the lead running back moving forward, which I'm not at all saying Tajay Spears does not have the ability to be the number 1 running back. He showed that last year. He is incredible talent. But I am absolutely so worried when it comes to this man's long-term health. Like, the amount of surgeries he's had to have on his knees, a lot of people are worried he's going to take the trajectory of Todd Gurley, play well for a season or two. Not to say he's going to get hurt next year or anything, but that wear and tear is going to be different on him than it is. The wear and tear that you expect from a running back once they hit the 27, 28-year-old mark is something that a lot of people are expecting, and I'm worried about it's going to happen with Tajay at the age of 24 or 25. So the whole point of bringing Derrick back will be able to split that load with 2 incredibly talented running backs, while Tajay gets to sit and also learn from Derrick Henry. You keep the presence of Derrick Henry around while also bringing back a very talented running back in Derrick Henry. Maybe you cut his load back a little bit more and give Tajay the spotlight, But at the same time, having those two guys back in an offense with a young rookie quarterback that would be able to rely on those two guys, I think there's really not a number restraint you put on that. I just feel like I feel like Derrick Henry just has to be a Titan. And to hear Brian Callahan talk about that today and be open to it, if Derrick wants to go elsewhere and actually chase a ring, that's another story. But that doesn't mean just because he wants to, that's going to happen, because a lot of these teams, that are really fighting for a ring and feel like they have a roster for next season that can fight for a ring, don't really have that much cap space that they can use on a Derrick Henry. So that might be his want and that might be his desire, but that there just might not be the right fit out there. So if you're able to bring Derrick Henry back on a 2-year non-ridiculous contract, I think you do that without a shadow of a doubt. It did make me feel a little bit more at ease with the Callahan hiring. Just hearing him say that, just the open-minded approach that he feels like he has that Vrabel didn't have. I feel like that's just kind of the reaching the surface, barely reaching the surface with Brian Callahan's philosophy. And I feel like that is a great philosophy to have with what the ownership wants this franchise to be moving forward, with the collaboration process and everybody kind of working together, which is sort of the exact opposite approach Mike Vrabel had before last season. It seems like he tried it out and it just didn't really work like they wanted to, and it wasn't as smooth sailing as they wanted to. I know there's a lot of rumors about Rand Carthon, the GM, and Mike Vrabel kind of clashing. I don't think that really happened. But I don't think there has to be a clashing of two heads, two egos, to understand that maybe it isn't the best fit. So, again, in recap, I'm sad we lost Vrabel, but I do understand that it could possibly have been the best move for the future of the franchise. Brian Callahan, I think, was probably one of the 3 guys that I wanted. So I'm definitely happy with the hire. It's just going to be weird. It's just going to be so weird without Mike Vrabel as the head coach of the Titans, because that just felt like our identity the past 5-6 years. But again, maybe it's a good thing that we're moving on. Absolutely no, I have no ill feelings to Mike Vrabel. The man gave his all to this franchise. That's not a question. Whether or not you agree, disagree with his tactics, whatever he has done, his philosophy, I feel like he did help this Titans organization move forward. Yes, we are in a bad spot right now, but he gave us some of the best days that we've had as a Titans fan in 15, 20, what at this point, 25 years, depending on what time period you want to evaluate. So it's gonna be weird watching the Titans without Mike Vrabel, but I do ultimately think we are in really, really good hands with a new head coach, Brian Callahan. So I love to hear you guys' thoughts. I know this is different content, but I love sometimes just sitting in and being able to put my thoughts into words. And for whatever reason, I kind of reached out. I kind of talked about this on Twitter to see if people would like to just see me just talk NFL, specifically Titans too, when stuff like that happens. And there was an overwhelming response that I never in a million years thought you guys cared enough to hear what I thought about things. So if you guys care, this could be something I do a lot more moving forward. I like to think I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to the football talk and whatnot. So this was fun. Again, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments below on the Titans move specifically. But if this is something that you'd like to see moving forward on this channel, because it's freaking fun. It was fun. But I guess this is the point where I stopped the recording. But hopefully you guys enjoyed, and you can subscribe too, because if you enjoyed it again, this is something that you can see more often on this channel.